and actually see what I want to say. Would you breathe with me, please? Taking a deep breath, and let it go. And again, and release. And one more deep, deep breath, and let it go. After that song, we kind of all need to get ourselves together, hey? So in 1997, some of you weren't even born yet, there was a simple little book that came out. And it took the metaphysical world by storm. It's become the go-to book for a lot of people who need inspiration, even after 20 years. And that book, of course, is called The Four Agreements. Raise your hand if you're familiar with it. Yeah. So you're about to become familiar with it. It was written by someone by the name of Don. His name isn't Don, like, hey, Donald. His name is Don, which is like a salutation, Miguel Ruiz. He was a medical doctor. And after a time, he realized that his healing nature was really much more holistic than what Western medicine was talking about. And because he had not only had his Western medical education, but his mother and his grandfather were schooled in the ancient Toltec teachings of Mexico and Central America. So he had that. He had both those sides. He had the traditional side, or the Western side, and he also had this mystical side to him. He had a near-life experience, yeah, probably, a near-death experience. And what happened as a result of that is that he chose that he was going to embrace the Toltec teachings much more deeply in his life. In fact, this book that we're going to be spending some time talking about is based on what he knows about the world, what he knows about society, what he knows about the Toltec teachings, and his own inner mysticism. And he put it together into this book called The Four Agreements. So, as I was trying to decide what I wanted to kind of start the new year off with, because, I figure a lot of you people show up at the beginning of the year, so I wanted to kind of wow you. Yeah? In a couple of months, it'll be a little more sparse, but hopefully not, okay? Okay. So I'm looking through my bookshelves, and I've been around and I've been doing this a long time, so I've got a lot of books, right? And I spied this little book. And I got it out and I started looking at it and realized that it was just such an absolute gem. There are principles in this book that are every bit as relevant today as they were 20 years ago, maybe even more so, because the world is in kind of a muddle these days. Would you agree? In fact, I know you agree, because I posted what I was going to talk about on Facebook, because I like Facebook. I bet you guys didn't know that. And I said I was going to be revisiting the Four Agreements, and the response from people was like, oh, I love that book. Oh, yay, yeah, I'm going to be there. Blah, blah, blah. So if you said you were going to be here and you're not, so here's what's going to happen. For the next 5 weeks, we are going to spend some time exploring or re-exploring the book. And what we're going to also do is we're going to tie it into our teaching. Our teaching is called The Science of Mind. So we're going to find that they are actually extremely compatible. So let me give you a for instance. This is what Don Miguel wrote in the opening chapter. This is his initial premise. Life is the force of the absolute, the supreme, the creator who creates everything. Everything in existence is a manifestation of the one living being we call God. Everything is God. Sound familiar? That's because Ernest Holmes wrote in the opening chapter of his book called The Science of Mind, He said the study of the science of mind is the study of first cause, spirit, mind, or that invisible essence, that ultimate stuff and intelligence from which everything comes. So I want you to understand the significance of that. You've got ancient Toltec wisdom, which is where that first part comes from, and you've got a 20th century philosopher that wrote a book called The Science of Mind. How can they be so compatible? Well, the answer is, truth is truth. Truth is truth, whether it comes from Ernest Holmes, whether it comes from Don Miguel Ruiz, whether Jesus said it, or Buddha, or Emerson, or Homer Simpson, or Oprah, or a native healer, or a shaman. Truth is truth. So Don Miguel goes on to talk about what an agreement means. This is very, very interesting, and again, ties in with our teaching. He talks about how everything in our lives, everything in our experience is the result of agreements that we have made beginning from the moment that we are first born. He said this: before we were born, the humans before us created a big outside dream that we call society's dream. That dream is the collective dream of billions of smaller personal dreams, which together create a dream of a family, a community, a city, a country, and a society. The dream includes all of society's rules, its beliefs, its laws, its religions, its cultures, and its ways to be. So that's the agreement. That's the dream that we are born into. I know that's a little bit out there, but Ernest Holmes teaches exactly the same thing. If you've taken a class with us, you know this. Ernest Holmes calls it race consciousness, or race belief, or race thought. Now, when I talk about race, I'm not talking about the color of our skin. I'm having to do with the collective thoughts of humanity, the collective thought agreements that we have as a race of people. I've heard it called groupthink. You with me so far? Yeah. So let me give you an example of groupthink and of race consciousness and see if you can relate to any of this. There is a race belief about being Canadian versus American. Yeah. Would you agree? Yeah. Be nice now. There's a race belief about being from Alberta versus BC. Yes? Yes? There's a race belief about being from Calgary versus Edmonton. There's a race belief about being from South Calgary versus North Calgary. Yes? I know. So it's these agreements, and that's just having to do with our geography, right? These agreements, this dream, becomes part of our belief systems. We were born into it. You all were not born disliking Edmonton. You were born, okay, some people are like, yes, I was. And when they become our belief systems, then they also become our experiences. For instance, our society has a collective agreement, a belief system that cold weather brings about cold and flu season. And the truth is, cold weather doesn't make us sick. It doesn't. Germs make us sick, and that's even up for debate, right? But whenever it gets cold outside, we collectively agree that it's time to get sick. We've been told it by our parents. Anybody else's mom tell you not to go outside with wet hair because you're going to catch your death of cold? Yeah. We've been told it by our teachers. We've been television, the internet, everything. We're told it often enough that we have believed it, therefore it has become our reality. It isn't real. It is not real, but it becomes real because we believe it. We agree to it. Not consciously, oh, I think I'm going to get sick today. Not consciously. It is one of our agreements. It is in our thought process. So this is what Don Miguel is talking about when he's talking about this dream world. A world of illusion. A world of made-up agreements. And so we develop our thoughts, we develop our agreements and our experiences based on what other people and society tell us is true. Particularly our families. Because those are the agreements that we are born into. That's the influence that we've had in our earliest days when we're so young. So many of you know a little bit, I share my own experience. What else am I going to share, right? So my father, dear man, dear man, but he was stoic, hardworking, non-complaining, don't rock the boat, don't draw attention to yourself kind of guy. He was a good German, Scottish stock. Campbell is the last name, Scottish. And you add to that he was a Marine officer. And you kind of get the picture of the family that I was born into, right? So our whole family was based in orderliness and hard work and stoicism. And then there's me. That has never been how I have approached life. I am an artiste. I'm a drama queen. I'm a diva. I gotta tell you a story. He's not here. I gotta make sure he's not here. So, man, I used to go out with, and I like things the way I like them. I am who I am. Anyway, so I said to him once, I said, what is it like for you? Because he's, just like an old boy Calgarian, right? I said, what is it like for you to be going out with a princess? And he says, I don't think of you as a princess. You're more like, what's that word? A diva. So, I am who I am. I can never get the hang of that whole discipline stuff of doing things right. I struggled with it all my life. So as a result, what happened is that I was trying to live somebody else's dream, and I ended up making really terrible choices for myself when I was young. Because I was struggling with something that I knew wasn't me, and I didn't understand what to do about it. I didn't know that I could change my agreements. More on that in just a bit. Now that said, another part of my family dynamic, about my family agreements, was a good sense of humor. My dad, even at his stoic best, was very funny, and he was a little bit smart aleck. So one of my earliest memories of that was at the dinner table when I was young, and my mom would pass the plate to get just a little bit more. She would say, just give me a skosh more, just a little bit more. And with a very smart aleck look on his face, he would take the tiniest little dollop of whatever it was that she was asking for and put it on her plate and hand it back to her, but with this really smart aleck look on his face, right? I come by it honestly, folks. What can I say? What can I say? So can you understand when I'm talking about how our families are passing both the good and the not as good beliefs and agreements to us? Are you all relating to this? Yes? You're with me? Okay. And sometimes those agreements serve us, and sometimes they don't. But as children, we believe everything our parents tell us. We just do. We don't have another frame of reference. We have bought into their dream. We have signed into their beliefs, even though we don't agree with them. Yes? You with me? Okay. And those agreements, they've shaped us, and they've formed our dream and our beliefs and our judgments. Now, I know as spiritual people, we're not supposed to judge. But we do. Right? Come on, don't judge me. Yes? Okay. We judge people, and we judge situations, and we judge things according to our belief systems that were developed through the years. Don Miguel refers to it as our book of laws. Our book of laws. And as we grow into adulthood, we develop a book of laws, and we hold everyone, most especially ourselves, accountable to those laws, even when they are old and outdated and no longer relevant and no longer serve us. And one of the reasons that we cling so tightly to our book of laws is that even though they may be old and outdated and no longer relevant and no longer serve us, they are safe. They are familiar. We may not have chosen our beliefs as we were growing up, but we have agreed to them at some level. We have made them our own. Up until now. Because as adults, we have the choice to agree to different agreements. We can change our minds about what we hold to be true. For instance, I can admit this now, particularly because they're gone, I just simply didn't agree with everything my parents stood for. I didn't. I don't agree with everything the media tells me. Yes? I don't agree with everything of the race consciousness of the world. I don't think Edmonton's so bad. It's a pretty river. As a result, what has happened is that I have consciously altered my agreements a lot over the years. For instance, bear with me, I'm telling my story here. As I said, as I grew up, all I wanted to do was be a performer. That's all I wanted to do. It was who I was. But my parents wanted me to devote my life to what they considered to be practical and more meaningful. And as I said, I rebelled for a while. And I went through my wild years. But then I settled down a little bit. I got sober, which I needed to do. I went to secretarial school. I got clerical skills. And I started working in an office. And I was good at what I did. I had a good education. I made okay money. But the truth is, I hated it. It was not who I was. But it made my parents happy. Finally, she settled down. Finally, she's doing something practical. She's towing the line. She's behaving according to our book of laws. As Don Miguel wrote, we especially try to please the ones who love us, like mom and dad, big brothers and sisters, the priests and the teachers. Trying to be good enough for them, we create an image of perfection, but we don't fit this image. Is anybody relating to this?
Yeah.
Okay, yeah, me too. So here's the catch-22. Is that we judge ourselves often for fitting into someone else's book of laws, but we also judge ourselves for not being true to our own book of laws. So we just spin around and spin around. Working in an office was not being true to myself. But being drunk and singing at karaoke bars wasn't either. So fortunately, what happened was that I began to wake up from that illusion, from that self-imposed dream. I began to choose different agreements in my life. For instance, I found this spiritual philosophy. It worked for me. It made sense to me. I think my parents would have chosen something different. But what happened was, as I began to learn more about how the universe works and my place in the universe, and that I could change my agreements and I could do these things, what happened was I continued to work my office job. That's how I made my living. But I also started doing the work in consciousness to change my life. Are you understanding what I'm saying here? I did my spiritual work. I did my mental work. I did my work. I began making different agreements. I rewrote my book of laws to suit who I was. And then I decided to become a minister. OMG. Now, I'm sure my parents thought it was just a little bit of a whim, whatever. But in time, what they saw instead was someone who was being true to themselves. Someone who was different and confident and focused. Someone who was living by her own set of agreements. And combined that, who I was, with the positive agreements that came out of being born in a family like mine. Now maybe they didn't understand all my life choices, I'm sure of it. But the more I became true to myself and who I was, they saw that changed me and they were satisfied. And they actually came to embrace what I do and my agreements as well. So for the next few weeks, we're going to talk about the actual 4 agreements. This was the prelude to it. Don Miguel tells us that living by these agreements will change your life forever. In fact, he wrote this: there are thousands of agreements that you have made with yourself, with other people, with your dream of life, with God, with society, with your parents, with your spouse, with your children. But the most important agreements are the ones you make with yourself. And here are the 4 agreements that he says will change your life. Be impeccable with your word. That'll be next week's talk, and it does not mean what you think it means. Don't take anything personally. Alrighty? Don't make assumptions. And always do your best. So each week we're going to take one of the agreements and we're going to explore it. Because this is the promise that he makes. He says you need a very strong will in order to adopt the 4 agreements. But if you can begin to live your life with these agreements, the transformation in your life will be amazing. You will see the drama of hell disappear right before your very eyes. Instead of living in a dream of hell, you will be creating a new dream, your personal dream of heaven. So are you willing? You going to be with me for the next 4 weeks? Yeah? We're going to be creating our personal dream of heaven using the 4 agreements. I love you, and so yes.